Good evening, everyone. I hope my voice is clear and the screen is visible. Great. Yesterday in our session, we had done cash from a cash flow statement, the meaning of cash flow statement, wherein I told you it tells us about the inflow and outflow of cash, which is how much cash I am receiving in the business, which is a good thing for me, positive for me, and how much cash am I paying in the business, which is a negative thing for me. तो कैश इनफ्लो मतलब पैसे बिजनेस में आ रहे हैं, कैश आउटफ्लो मतलब पैसे बिजनेस में से जा रहे हैं. That is a cash flow statement. Is that clear? तो पैसे आना, इनफ्लो ऑफ कैश, पैसे जाना, आउटफ्लो ऑफ कैश. फिर हमने किया था कैश फ्लो स्टेटमेंट दो तरीकों से बनता है, डायरेक्ट मेथड, इनडायरेक्ट मेथड. जो हम डिटेल में करेंगे वो होगा इनडायरेक्ट मेथड. फिर मैंने बताया था आपको कि कैश फ्लो स्टेटमेंट के तीन कंपोनेंट्स होते हैं, कैश फ्रॉम ऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटी, कैश फ्रॉम इन्वेस्टिंग एक्टिविटी, कैश फ्रॉम फाइनेंसिंग एक्टिविटी. फिर हमने क्या था कि इनडायरेक्ट मेथड में हम नेट प्रॉफिट से स्टार्ट करते हैं. अब नेट प्रॉफिट जो है, हमारा कैश उससे ज्यादा भी हो सकता है, उससे कम भी हो सकता है. तो हम नेट प्रॉफिट को एडजस्ट करते हैं. किन दो चीजों से एडजस्ट करते हैं? नॉन कैश एक्सपेंसेस एंड नॉन ऑपरेटिंग एक्सपेंसेस. अगर हमने उनको कंसिडर करने के बाद प्रॉफिट निकाला है तो उन सबको ऐड बैक कर देते हैं ताकि हमको पता चले कि हमारा एक्चुअल कैश क्या है. क्योंकि हमने ऐसे एक्सपेंसेस ले लिए हैं जैसे डेप्रिसिएशन, जिसके लिए हमको कोई कैश नहीं देना पड़ता है. तो हमने प्रॉफिट तो कम कर लिया है पर हमारी कैश पोजीशन उससे ज्यादा होगी, तो हम इसीलिए उसको ऐड बैक करते हैं. एक ये करते हैं. दूसरा दूसरा हम जो करते हैं वो है वर्किंग कैपिटल चेंजेस से चीजों को एडजस्ट करते हैं, प्रॉफिट्स को एडजस्ट करते हैं. अब वर्किंग कैपिटल क्या होता है? करंट एसेट्स माइनस करंट लायबिलिटीज. तो अगर आपके करंट एसेट्स कम हो रहे हैं, करंट एसेट्स मतलब वो एसेट्स जो कैश में कन्वर्ट हो जाते हैं विद इन वन अकाउंटिंग ईयर, अगर वो कम हो रहे हैं इसका मतलब कैश आ गया है बिजनेस में, कैश का इनफ्लो हुआ है. तो डिक्रीज इन करंट एसेट को ऐड बैक करते हैं, इंक्रीज इन करंट एसेट को डिडक्ट करते हैं. ऐसे ही डिक्रीज इन करंट लायबिलिटी मतलब वो सब लायबिलिटीज जिनको मेरे को पे करना है. तो मैं जब पेमेंट करूंगी तो मेरी करंट लायबिलिटीज कम हो जाएंगी, तो कैश भी कम हो जाएगा, इसको माइनस करते हैं. और इंक्रीज इन करंट लायबिलिटी को ऐड करते हैं. इससे हमको पता चल जाता है हमारा एक्चुअल कैश पोजीशन क्या है फ्रॉम ऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटी. अब जब ऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटी की मैं बात कर रही हूं, या इफ आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट ऑपरेटिंग एक्टिविटी, इट सिंपली टेल्स मी दैट इट इज मनी दैट इज रिलेटेड टू माय बिजनेस एक्टिविटी, my core business activity, that is the company which has been opened for doing business of that product or that service. So a good company should always have a positive cash flow from operating activity. That means the inflow of cash should be greater than the outflow of cash from its business activities. So if we read the first slide, it says it indicates the amount of cash a company generates from its ongoing regular business activity. When I say business activity, it means the term that the thing that I am doing business in, उससे मेरा positive cash flow होना चाहिए. Positive cash flow मतलब inflow of cash, जितने पैसे अंदर आए हैं that should be greater than जितने पैसे business में से बाहर जा रहे हैं. That is the meaning of positive cash flow, or the amount of cash being generated by a company from its operating activity. All right. So if this term is clear, then we move ahead. That means when I say operating activity, it can be anything related to manufacturing a product. It can be anything related to selling our services. So for a doctor, his operating activity would be his clinic, the amount of cash he generates from his OPD, that is his clinic. So when I say operating activity, it is both related to manufacturing as well as related to selling. If this slide is clear, I'll move ahead. But before that, आप मुझे please chat box में बताएं अगर आप चाहते हैं मैं repeat करूं. I hope I'm audible. Okay, great. अब as investors, आपको क्यों जरूरत है cash flow statement समझने की? और what is the importance of cash flow statement for us as investors? If a business is having negative cash flow statement, or if before a negative cash flow statement, I will say if a business is having a negative cash flow from operating activity, if it's a negative cash flow from operating activity, that tells us that the business is giving out more money than what it is getting from its business activity. So that tells us every year the business is losing on money, losing on cash. Business has to take out cash, maybe from its savings, maybe from some other place, to pay off excess expenses. So how long can a business do that? It'll be difficult for a business to maintain that for a long period of time. So the first rule that we should see when we are seeing a cash flow statement of a prospective investment that we are going to make, if the cash flow from operating activity is negative, we will not consider investing in such a company. Yet if you feel that this company is going to give you better returns, my suggestion would be, please go through the cash flow statement of previous years also. If you see a rise in its earnings, then decide for it. Otherwise, as an investor, I would say if a cash flow from operating activity is negative for consecutive years, 2, 3, 4 साल से वो negative ही है, then it is not wise that we take so much of risk to invest in this company, because इनके operating expenses बहुत ज्यादा हैं, income कम है, तो कहाँ से बार बार हम cash लाएंगे, बार बार लोन लेना पड़ेगा, which is also not good for a company. So cash flow statement is important because they measure whether a company generates enough cash to meet its operating expenses, which is of utmost importance. Why? Because if I don't have cash to pay my operating expenses, every time I will have to take a loan, or every time I will have to issue shares. And by taking a loan or by issuing shares, I am not planning a growth of the company. I'm only giving my backlog expenses. So nowhere am I improving on my operations. Every year I will have losses. Every year I will have outflows of cash. So it will be difficult for me to maintain such a company for a long period of time. So the first rule, I won't say a rule, but first suggestion is that if a cash flow from operating activity is negative, we need not consider investing in such companies. The third slide, wherein this is what we do to calculate cash from operating activity from our net profit. What do I do? To the net income or to the net profit, I add non-cash items, and I also add changes in working capital. The examples of non-cash items are depreciation and amortization. What was depreciation? If you remember, I think I have told you what was depreciation. If I buy, say, a phone today or a car today, and I decide to sell it in 2 days, or I decide to sell it even tomorrow, I won't be able to sell it at the same price at which I bought. भले ही 5,000 कम मिले, भले ही 10,000 कम मिले, पर कुछ cash मुझे कम मिलेगा. Why? Because people think it is second hand. It has already been used. So the value of that asset falls down. The fall in the value of the asset due to my usage is known as depreciation. But that you also know कि आज हमने फोन लिया, ऐसा थोड़ी ना हर दिन जाकर हम कहीं कैश दे रहे हैं कि यो लो इतना depreciation हो गया इस पर. Wherever we don't go and give cash for depreciation anywhere, but we deduct it as an expense, so my profits have gone down, but my actual cash position is greater than the profits, and that is why I add back depreciation to find the amount of cash that I have. Did we do amortization? I have to depend on you to let me know. Otherwise, I will explain amortization to you. I hope depreciation is clear. Please let me know, and I have no, okay, depreciation is clear, Jaspreet ji. Amortization. What is the meaning of amortization? Now, okay, we can say, supposing all of us today want to go and buy a phone, a mobile phone. Everybody will have their own preferences. Some people would go in for iPhone, some would go in for Samsung, and maybe some others for some other brand cell phone. Now, why is that that we think about maybe an iPhone? What is it that we feel, okay, iPhone is better and we should go in for iPhone? Why so? Because that is an impression in my mind, in my heart. Oh, this phone is going to give me value for money, although I haven't used it maybe, but I have that notion. मैंने अपने दिमाग में ये सोच के रखा है कि ओहो आईफोन तो बहुत अच्छा होता है. Oh, iPhone gives me that status symbol. So what is it? It's only a thought. It's only a feeling that I have. It is not proven anywhere कि iPhone ही best है. So that feeling of mine, because of that thought process of mine, maybe I influence 5 other people. तो इससे किसको फायदा हो रहा है? एप्पल को फायदा हो रहा है, एप्पल कंपनी को फायदा हो रहा है. सब जा रहे हैं और उनसे वही प्रोडक्ट ले रहे हैं. इससे उनके प्रॉफिट्स हाई हो रहे हैं. तो इस नोशन को, इस थॉट प्रोसेस को हम क्या बोलते हैं? गुडविल ऑफ द कंपनी, द ब्रांड वैल्यू ऑफ द कंपनी. इसको गुडविल बोला जाता है. तो गुडविल एक इनटैंजिबल एसेट होता है. When I say intangible asset, asset to hai. Why? Because it is because of that notion, because of my thought process. I go to that company and I buy its product over and over again, or I influence people to buy that product over and over again. So in that process, the company's profit is increasing. The company is getting more cash, and that is why it is known as an intangible asset. But supposing the company now wants to get over with its all intangible assets. It wants to write off all the intangible assets. मतलब अगर goodwill की value उनके books में दिख रही थी around 1 lakh, they don't want to show it any longer in their balance sheet as an asset. तो वो क्या करेंगे? बेच तो सकते नहीं है. हम अपना brand value तो किसी को नहीं बेच सकते जब तक हम अपनी company ना बेचे. So what do we do with this fictitious asset or intangible asset? I write it off. That means I show it as an amortization, writing off of the intangible asset. अब इसके लिए मुझे कहीं पैसे देने नहीं है, but I show it in the expense side. तो मेरे profits तो कम हो जाते हैं, but my cash position is higher. So that is why I am adding it back to net profit to get my actual cash. Now I will wait. Please let me know if amortization is clear, because these terms can very well come in the cash flow statement of a company. Vishal ji, I'm sorry, I am not able to get what you are trying to say. Repay? Do you want me to repeat again? Okay, yeah. Yeah, the brand value of a company, Jaspreet ji, that is known as the goodwill of a company. The chance that a customer will come back to the company and buy its products over and over again. And because of the customer buying the products over and over again, the profits of the company are increasing. Because the profits increase, there is a brand, there is a value associated with its name, which is known as goodwill. But we all understand that we can't sell a company's name only. Either we sell the entire company Now, supposing when I sell the entire company, along with the value of its assets, I will also pay a value for the name of the company, which is known as goodwill of the company. Now, supposing the company itself decides that it does not want to show the goodwill or the brand name as an asset in its balance sheet. If it has already decided that, then I need to write it off. When I say write it off, it means show it on the expense side of the profit and loss account. So if it is on the expense side, that means by writing it off, I'm decreasing the net profit of the company. But just writing it off, I am not giving cash anywhere. So although my profits have decreased, my cash position has not decreased. That is why I added back to find my actual cash position. Vanishri ji, yes, because of brand value, the increase in profit, because of that, we give a name of an intangible asset to that brand value, which is known as goodwill, and we calculate goodwill. That goodwill becomes an intangible asset. Not the profit is the goodwill, but there are ways to calculate goodwill. Anuji, I am sorry, please reframe your question. Yeah, goodwill is calculated on the basis of the profits that the company is making. There are formulas to calculate goodwill. As the profits of the company keep on increasing, the brand name increases, the goodwill of the company increases. Yes, it can deduct part, like supposing the value of goodwill of a company is 10 lakh and now it wants to show the goodwill at 5 lakh. So it will write off only 5 lakh. Yes, partial amount of goodwill can be written off. Whatever amount is written off is known as amortization. So these two terms, depreciation is for any tangible asset, the asset which I can hold in my hand, and they mean actually the same. Both are non-cash in nature, but depreciation, please remember, it is for a fixed asset, for a tangible asset, and amortization is for an intangible asset, as we just discussed, that feeling, that thought process of ours, which cannot be touched by anyone. So we call it as an intangible asset. I hope these two terms are clear. Please feel free to ask again. I can repeat again. We are not in a hurry to conduct the session. And if it is clear, please let me know. I will move ahead. Thank you, Vishalji. I got your answer. I'm waiting for others. If you can just pen down whether you want me to go to the next slide, then I will move on. Else, I will try and explain it in a different language. Okay, Vanishri ji. Here, the next slide. So one thing that we have done, we add to net profit, we add non-cash expenses. In that, we did examples as depreciation and amortization. One more thing that we do is we also add changes in working capital. So what do I add? Now, let us take an example of a current asset as debtors. Who are debtors? So supposing I have made sales, credit sales, I have given my products to a person and he has promised to pay me cash later. That person is known as the debtor of a company. So the person to whom I have made credit sales and he has promised to pay me cash later. मतलब मैंने उसको goods बेचे हैं, क्रेडिट पे बेचे हैं और उसने मुझे प्रॉमिस किया है 2 महीने या 3 महीने बाद वो मुझे पैसे दे देगा. तो क्योंकि मुझे विदिन 12 मंथ्स पैसे मिल जाएंगे तो वो करंट एसेट हो गया. अब आप ये इमेजिन करिए कि वो सपोजिंग 20,000 रुपीज था और उसने 2 महीने बाद आपको वो 20,000 रुपीज दे दिए. तो क्या होगा? आपके डेटर्स कम हो जाएंगे, तो करंट एसेट डिक्रीज हो रहा है, पर कैश पोजीशन का क्या होगा? क्योंकि उसने कैश पे किया है, आपका कैश बढ़ जाएगा. इसीलिए डिक्रीज इन करंट एसेट इज एडेड. So because the debtor is paying you within 2 months, what has happened is your current assets have decreased, but your cash has increased. That is why we add decrease in current asset. And if you think opposite of this, you've made more credit sales. So what has happened? Your debtors have increased. They haven't paid you cash. So although your sales have increased, but your profit will increase, but your cash will not increase. Why? Because they've not paid you the money. उन्होंने पैसे ही नहीं दिए तो आपका cash कैसे बढ़ेगा? So that is why we say decrease in current asset is added, increase in current asset is deducted. इसको हम स्टॉक का एग्जांपल लेकर देखें तो करंट एसेट्स में स्टॉक भी आता है. अगर स्टॉक मैंने बेचा तो स्टॉक कम होगा, बेचूंगी मुझे कैश मिलना चाहिए, कैश इंक्रीज होगा, तभी आप देखिए डिक्रीज इन करंट एसेट इज एडेड. अब अगर मैं स्टॉक बना बना के रखती जा रही हूँ, वो बेच नहीं रही हूँ, तो करंट एसेट्स बढ़ रहे हैं और कैश पोजीशन भी कम हो रही है. क्यों कम हो रही है? बनाने में भी तो पैसे लगते हैं. वाइस वर्सा, व्हेन आई से वाइस वर्सा, इसका उल्टा करते हैं करंट लायबिलिटी के लिए. अब करंट लायबिलिटी ऐसा है कि सपोजिंग मुझे किसी को 2 महीने की सैलरी देनी थी, मैंने वो सैलरी दे दी, तो क्या होगा? मेरी करंट लायबिलिटी कम हो जाएगी, पर इसके साथ मेरा कैश भी कम हो रहा है क्योंकि मैंने पेमेंट की है. सो दैट इज व्हाई डिक्रीज इन करंट लायबिलिटी इज एडेड and increase in current liability is deducted. Sorry, increase in current liability is added. Why? तो सपोजिंग आपने किसी को पेमेंट करनी थी, अगले महीने भी उसको पेमेंट नहीं की, तो क्या होगा? मेरी कैश पोजीशन हायर होगी, कैश पोजीशन हायर होगी इसलिए उसको ऐड बैक करते हैं. I will wait. Vanishri ji, you want to say something? Okay. So what I am doing for you is I am going to slide number 1. I want you to go through this slide number 1, slide number 2, slide number 3, and slide number 4 on your own so that you are confident that you understand. And then I will move on to slide number 5. Here, please. Just let me put this on the side and you can read it, please. Once you've read slide number 1, I'll move on to slide number 2. Okay, I think you must have read it. I'm moving on to slide number 2. A small request, if there's anything that is confusing you that you do not recall, please let me know. I will go again. The third slide. The fourth one. Vanishri ji, without knowing the fundamentals, yes, Nifty 50 companies, they are strong, but I don't know how much profits would you make. They have shares of high value. So the profits that you make should also be considerable since you'll be investing your capital, you'll be investing your time in it. That's a misprint. It's cash. non-cash item. Okay, let's move on to the 5th slide. Here. Now, supposing the cash flow from operating activity is positive. That means we are making money out of it, out of our business activity. That means the amount of cash that I am paying is much less than the amount of cash that I am getting. So that is why I say inflow of cash is more than the outflow of cash. Now, if I have excess cash with me, I can do many things. Number one, if I've taken a loan, I can repay the loan. That means if I do that, my debt equity ratio will go down. Second, if I have enough cash, I can please my shareholders and I can give them dividend. When I say please my shareholders, because I've given them dividend, they will not think of selling my shares in the market and moving on to some other company. So in that case, the value of my the share price will remain stable. You must have observed, if you are observing the market, if there is heavy selling on the shares, the value of the share falls. So to avoid that, if we have positive cash flow from operating activity, we can utilize this cash to pay the dividend of the company. Now, dividend we know is a share of profits. We had done this. But how will we be able to pay? We are able to pay anyone, anything when we have cash in our hand. And that is what we are talking about. If we have positive cash flow from operating activity, we'll be able to retain our shareholders by pleasing them, by giving them dividend. We can also improve our company's books, company's position by paying off our debt. We can also think about, because we have cash in our hand, we have enough working capital in the sense that we have money for our day-to-day operations. We can think of investing the excess cash in new projects, for launching new products. अगर मैं नई कंपनी नहीं खोलना चाहती हूं तो मैं नए प्रोडक्ट्स को लॉन्च करूंगी. So this is what I can do from positive cash flow from operating activity. So, as I just told you, it is always better that we invest in a company which has positive cash flow from operating activity. I also told you that it is better that we see the cash flow of last 2, 3, 4 years. And if it is an upward moving trend, then it is better for us to invest in the company. When I say upward moving trend, मतलब पिछले से पिछले साल से लास्ट ईयर मेरे पास ज्यादा कैश था, लास्ट ईयर से भी ज्यादा इस साल ज्यादा कैश है, तो मतलब ग्राफ इज मूविंग अपवर्ड. So it is always wise that we look for companies which have a positive cash flow from operating activity. And again, एक साल का अच्छा नहीं है, आपको 2-3 साल का ट्रेंड देखना चाहिए. अगर अपवर्ड ट्रेंड है तो आप इस कंपनी को शॉर्टलिस्ट कर सकते हैं फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट. I hope I have made myself clear. Then we are talking about, after this, I will, once you say yes and you've understood it, then I will move ahead and talk about what will happen if there is negative cash flow from operating activity. You can get the data of all this from their financial statements. I think screener.in. वहां पर आप yeah, just to check, वहां पर when you log in and write the name of any company, you will get their financial statement also, मतलब profit भी, and you will get cash flow statement also. You'll get the ratios also. Because the companies also want that there are more investors in their company. तो ये सारा जो data है ये मिलता है आपको. Tomorrow I will make a PPT of it and show it to you. Okay, if this is clear, I'm sorry. If it's a negative cash flow from operating activity, what does it tell us? It tells me that my expenses are more than my revenue. It also tells me that every year I am losing on cash. तो ये कैश को सप्लीमेंट करने के लिए या तो मुझे लोन लेना पड़ेगा, या तो मुझे और शेयर होल्डर्स को शेयर्स इशू करने पड़ेंगे, पर मुझे कहीं ना कहीं से कैश जनरेट करना पड़ेगा एवरी ईयर, which is not feasible for any company. So in the long run, this company will not be able to survive. This company's shares will not be able to give you that profit. And of course, अगर negative cash flow है, losses हैं, तो dividend तो आपको मिलेगा ही नहीं. Vishalji, I didn't get it. Which screen do you want me to open and explain what term? No, I can't open screener.in and then start explaining terms to you. Some effort, sir, you'll also have to do. Please open, see it. The term that you don't get, please get it for me. I will get the name and everything of that site and I will give it to you. I have taken my figures, which I will give you after explaining cash flow statement, to analyze yourself from the same site. So you will see the same figures if you type the company's name. Yeah. Yes, Vishalji. And if you go to the channel Stock Pro on YouTube, that the entire description has been given there. Okay, coming back to what I was saying, that negative cash flow statement, negative cash flow from operating activity tells us that we are losing on cash every year. That means my expenses are more than the amount of cash that I'm generating. Mukeshji, I'll come back to your question, please. Give me a minute. Yeah, money control will also have, Anuji, the figures, of course. So I was saying that a negative cash flow statement tells us that the expenses are more than the money that I have received, and therefore there is negative cash. That means I will have to pay more cash out of my pockets, and for that I will have to generate cash maybe out of my loan or out of capital. So every year we cannot go on looking for more cash from other sources when we are not making money out of our business activity. So that is what we cannot sustain a business with long-term negative cash flow. Business is losing money all the time. If there is any problem here, I'm waiting for your questions. Mukeshji, I'm taking up your question. Yeah, we will discuss about investing activity and financing activity tomorrow. And then the entire cash flow statement I will give you 5 companies for you to analyze, so that you can make your own decisions and we can analyze it together. So that much I will definitely do with you, so that at least you know how to pick up companies. No, then that's what Vaishali ji, we will talk about it tomorrow. It will be clear for you. When I discuss cash from investing activity and cash from financing activity, these doubts that you are having will be clear. So tomorrow, once we are done with the entire cash flow statement, आप खुद बता पाएंगे इस चीज का आंसर. Okay. Please ask Vanishri ji if it is debt equity ratio. We've already covered it. Please go ahead, ask. Mukesh ji, I'm coming back to your question. Vanishri ji, I'm waiting for your question. Okay. By the time you are asking the question, Mukesh ji, your question was what happens to the price of a share if the company pays dividend, right? When the company first decides to pay the dividend, so that it announces in the market that it is going to pay the dividend. The moment it announces that the company is ready to pay this much of dividend, the value of the share, the stock price of the share in the market, it usually increases. Why? Because the dividend is the amount of money that we are going to pay to the shareholders out of its profits. So the shareholders feel ab to humko cash aayega, they don't want to let go of the share, and therefore they hold on to the share, which increases the value of the share. But the moment dividend is paid, the correction that has to be brought in, the value of the share decreases marginally and then comes back to normal. Mukesh ji, I hope I have answered. If there is any other query that you have, please ask. Vanishri ji, you have a question, I believe, from debt equity ratio. Please go ahead and ask. Yeah. The ideal debt equity ratio is 2:1. When I say ideal, इससे ज़्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए. But 1:1, 1.5:1, इस तक में वो company is considered good. Company is managing its debt and is also taking care of how to save on taxes. So such companies are good for us. So the ideal range that you are talking about should be close to 1 to 1.5, 1.6, 1.75. बट पूरा 2:1 नहीं होना चाहिए, क्योंकि उसके बाद अगर कंपनी को पैसे चाहिए तो फिर कंपनी लोन नहीं ले सकती, एंड लोन इज द इजीएस्ट सोर्स ऑफ कैश और मनी फॉर द बिजनेस. It is not usually done by exchange, Mukesh ji. It is usually done by the company's own doings. Yes, it does. Yes, the company itself does. It corrects the share price. We say ex dividend. Yes, I said much lesser ratio is not good, Vanashri ji, because then the company is not planning to save on taxes. Because as we had discussed, interest is a tax deductible expense. Vanashri ji, is that clear? A much lesser ratio could be 0.5, 0.4, like that. But having zero debt is also not good. Yeah, 1:1 would be very good. In fact, a better company would be around 1.25. Or else if it's a very big company like Tata and all, then their debt is really low because they have been carrying on business from very long time. So in that case, their debt is low. So moving to investing activity and financing activity, we'll do that in tomorrow's session. And meanwhile, you can go through these. If there are doubts that come back tomorrow before we start with investing and financing activity, we'll first take your doubts and then move on to the next two type of activities. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night. Thank you.